CIO for New Hanover County down in Wilmington, and I have Cindy Hewitt here. Cindy is our deputy CIO for New Hanover County. We're going to go through just a little bit about Agile, but we're mostly going to focus on the Scrum process this month. I'm going to take some high-level theory for you guys, and then Cindy's going to demonstrate for you how we practically use Scrum in our day-to-day work in New Hanover County. I should say Cindy's arrival in our department, not arrival, but her recent promotion to the deputy CIO position is what gave us, I believe, the space to really do Scrum. We were struggling in our IT department a little bit to really deliver on our commitments with projects. We were getting lost in the little stuff. I was having this conversation with somebody at breakfast this morning. You know, we started governance, so we had these big, highly visible priority projects that we're supposed to deliver on. But for whatever reason, we were getting maybe 50% of them done on time. And when we started looking at that, the things that were distracting us were a lot of the little stuff. You know, the ring phone, will you just do this one little thing for me? Not the broken stuff. We were handling the broken stuff fine. It was I want this one little thing, or can you do this one thing more? So we said, we've got to do something different here, because we've got to put the focus on the priority work. So I stumbled across this book, and Cindy brought it today. And I didn't see the Scrum part at first. The title that caught me was The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. Now, who wouldn't want that? So I started reading that a little bit and took it to Cindy and said, we need to try this thing. You know, we need to try this method and see how it works. So in January of this year, we started using Scrum for our priority projects. And as Cindy goes through the presentation, she will let you know that we now, starting July 1, use it for all of our non-break fix work. So we not only Scrum our big projects, but even what we call our small projects, our SLA work, which is like upgrades to systems and everything we put through Scrum. And we had part of our planning process this week. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking at our list of work for the year, feeling very confident that we're going to be in a good place at the end of this fiscal year. We had our IT governance committee meeting yesterday, and I was pleased to report out to them we're on track with those projects. It's just been a good success for us. The one thing I will say going in, you can make this as easy or as complicated as you want to make it. We try to make it simple. The picture up at the top, for those of you that aren't rugby fans, Scrum is a rugby term, and I don't watch rugby either. But these guys are all crowded around the ball. The ball's under there somewhere. And they move the ball in these little tiny increments, from what I understand, forward towards the goal. So it's about small little movement by the whole team crowded around the ball. So if you think about that, that's how Scrum came to be, or the term Scrum came to be used. So today, we're going to go through a couple of big topics here. Some basics around Agile and Scrum, just very high level. And then the Scrum terminology that you'll need to understand to know what Cindy's talking about when she tells you how we use Scrum in New Hanover County. Some people get wrapped up in the terminology, and if you started peeking at your sheet there, you think, artifacts, what's an artifact? But I don't know that we go over that much today, but we will talk about it. So what is Agile? Agile came about because you remember in the old days of software development, there was this requirements gathering phase when you were developing software. We put together 50 or 75 pages of requirements, and we went off in the dark room and worked on that coding and all that kind of stuff. And it took years before our customers ever saw a product, right? And then it was like, well, our requirements changed a year ago. And they never got into the requirements. So what Agile did in the software development world was say, we are going to do something different. We're not going to focus on everything at once. We're going to do small, iterative development. So if you were doing or programming, which some people used to program their own tax software, right? We would do that now. If you were programming your own tax collection system, you would focus on one deliverable from that, which might be motor vehicle taxes back in the day, and finish that first, and then move on to other things. So it's focused on very small developments and deliverable products or deliverable tangible work at the end of each small increment of time, so that you can more quickly respond to changing requirements. This does not mean that you forego some of the formality of your project management, right? It doesn't mean that, well, what do you want next month? What do you want next month? It is really about breaking the work down into small phases that can be completed and show progress along the way, which is a milestone of good project management anyway with your work breakdown structure, right? This is just a way to visualize and keep moving. So Agile came about in that way. So then what is Scrum, which was really what we're going to focus in on today? Scrum is a subset of Agile practices. It follows that small iterative work development concept, the ability to adapt to changes. But it's just a framework for organizing your work, okay? Self-directed teams are at the center of Scrum. It is about letting your folks know what they need to be doing and setting them free to do it. That is the foundation of that. And we're going to get into this little diagram in a minute. I think I've got these two slides backwards, or should be backwards as I'm looking through it. So I'm going to start here. A couple of Scrum terms. And you can get wrapped around these, but just go with it, okay? Backlog. In the Scrum world, backlog is just the list of work that you have to be doing, okay? On your sheet, you'll see there's something called user stories. User stories are almost like your proposals, business proposals. We didn't really get into that yet, and that's a great thing about Scrum too. You read the whole Jeff Sutherland book, and where you can just take it to the nth degree. We chose not to do user stories yet. We may come back and circle around to that, but we do not. We start our process with a backlog. Backlog is a list of work to be done. And again, this has nothing to do with break fix. Incidents, problems, those still go through our ticket system. This is about planned work. Planned work. A sprint. I mentioned these short, iterative phases of work to be done. So the sprint is the period of time that you're going to start and stop and have something tangible to see at the end of that time period. So sprint is that term. Stand-ups. Stand-ups are crucial in the Scrum world. Stand-ups are meetings, and you'll see on your sheet in the software development world, they do them daily. We do them weekly in New Hanover County, and Cindy's going to tell you about that. But stand-ups are meetings where the team communicates what they're working on and lets a person that you're going to see the name called the Scrum Master know if they need any help moving their work along. So product backlog, they call it product backlog in the software development world. We just call it backlog, is the list of work to be done. Sprint is the period of time in which we measure our work, and then stand-ups are the meetings that keep the communication flowing during the sprint. There are other meetings that you'll see on here, and Cindy, you're going into the planning?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's one term I didn't put up here, which is sprint planning. There are a couple other meetings, you'll see them on your sheet, and Cindy's going to talk about those. Now let me go back and talk about the roles, people. There are 3 roles in Scrum. There's the product owners. And again, that's from the software world, so don't get too hung up on what's a product owner. Product owners are just keepers of the backlog. So who are your gatekeepers? Who can put work onto your list of work to be done? If you think about, if your shop is anything like ours, I mentioned earlier, the big stuff was getting deferred for a lot of the small stuff. And that's because, you know, people underestimate how much time it really takes to do something for that person who called. And so it'll only take me an hour or 2. I can put this project aside and work on that for you. And 5 days later, the project's still sitting to the side, right? That, I'm sure that doesn't happen to anybody else. But we have formalized that. Product owners are the only people who can move something out of backlog and onto the active work list. Okay, so anybody can receive a request for work, but the product owners are the keep the backlog and the prioritization of the work and those kinds of things. It also, the product owners also communicate requirements. So we have to make sure, and Cindy and I are the product owners in our department, or the backlog owners. We have to make sure we understand what it is we're committing to deliver. So the requirements, what are we really committing to deliver with this project? And I mentioned the priorities. Scrum Masters, you can go actually and take classes and become a certified Scrum Master. It's a big thing. Scrum Masters, our supervisors are our Scrum Masters, and they actually are charged with removing impediments for their people. And I should have put impediments probably as a term for you. An impediment is anything that keeps the project from moving forward. So an impediment could be a person that you're having trouble getting in touch with, or a vendor who won't respond. We have those things probably more often than technical problems, but it could be a technical problem. It is the Scrum Master's job to remove those impediments for the team so that they can focus on getting the work done, right? So some of our Scrum Masters might have to call that vendor and say, hey, we're dead in the water until we get you to respond to us. Or might have to go over to finance and say, hey, we've been waiting for this paperwork for an awfully long time. Can we get it unstuck so we can move forward? They also are the people who are the coaches of the process. So when we have new people come in, or we have people wondering, you know, what is that process again? They help coach with that as well. And then everybody else are team members. They're the people who do the work. And the teams in Scrum are cross-functional. So in our department, we have network people, analysts, PC support people, all on teams delivering work on Scrum team. This will make more sense to you as Cindy goes through the practical. But this slide shows you the Scrum Cycle. And again, I mentioned for us it's 1 month. So the stories I talked about are here. So somebody comes to you with the big idea. I need this new piece of software, and here's what I needed to do. Story to me is a very nice way to think about it. What do you hope will accomplish? But we're not going to go into that today. So the story comes on to this list of work that we have called the backlog. We plan and move things off the backlog and onto active work for a sprint. Okay? So things move off this list and onto a sprint. And then we run a sprint. And again, for us, that's a month. During that month, work gets done, and then we have things to show for it at the end. These daily cycles here, for us, they're weekly. That's your stand-up meetings where you're getting feedback. How are we doing? How do we move forward? What's keeping us from moving forward? And then at the end of the sprint, we have something to show for it. Some of our projects close during the month. Some of them are these short projects and they finish in a month. Other ones at least have some sort of milestone at the end of the sprint to say we have accomplished work on this project, and then continues forward into the next month with planned work to do. And a lot of this will click for you when Cindy shows you how we actually do it. this is kind of the theory behind it. There is also in Scrum a feedback cycle. So in Scrum it's called retrospectives. There are these meetings called retrospectives at the end where you meet with your stakeholders, and we don't do these every month. We haven't done one in a while, and we've said it's about time to do another one. But team members, stakeholders, which are our departments that we're doing work for, us as the product owners, we all get together and we do some reflection. How did we do? It's not on the quality of the deliverable, but how did the process work? Okay, how did the process work for us, for those folks? And that feeds back into what we need to do and how we might do it better and differently. So that's the cycle there. And this is the high level, little bit of terminology for you so that you will understand the practical. And I'm going to let Cindy go through what we actually do in our department to put this into action.
Morning.
Morning.
Great. Good morning again, right? Okay. I did want to reiterate, let's see, let me get acclimated to this first. Okay. I did want to reiterate for you all, just simply because I think it's important. When Leslie first started talking, she said, why did we do this? And we found ourselves in a place in New Hanover County that we had a lot of changes going on. We had a new county administration put in place with a new county manager who loves information. He loves info, and that's great. We also found that the ITGC, the IT Governance Council, had been recently implemented. And so our projects that met their criteria were going through a process to be approved or denied, determining if we would actually be working on what we would be working on with the ITGC. So our project work was becoming much more visible. I hate to say that it was being scrutinized, but in some respects it was. It was under a lot more scrutiny. And so we knew that we needed to do something. We certainly were open to trying different things, but we needed something that we would be able to manage our projects, we'd be able to prioritize our project work, and we'd be able to focus on what we needed to do and keep on track. Ran into Scrum, if you will, and we adapted it to fit our needs. So what I want you, if you take away anything this morning, is that you can make this fit your needs. You can read the book, you can see what Jeff Sutherland recommends, but think outside the box and allow yourself to take the methodology and to put it in place to work for you. There's no right or wrong. There might be some differences from what you find in the textbook, but it's what works for you. And this is what is working for us. And I would have to say, after having been in the IT office for a few years, I actually came on board as an analyst. And so seeing us go through different iterations of how we were working with our projects, managing our projects, I can truthfully say this is the most successful that I have personally experienced. So I stand by it, and I hope that it's something that we'll continue to move forward with. So we adapted it to fit our needs. It allows us to better plan and to manage our work. We truly can see the work, the requests that are coming in, and we can take those, and our team of supervisors are working together to plan and to manage that workload. It keeps our work visible, not only to the county, but also to the department, and I think this is important. We found ourselves with several of our IT staff pretty much working in silos. They sort of had developed their own island, and they weren't really working as part of a team, if you will. But this has allowed us to open communication within our office, from our office to other departments that we support, and we really have embraced the concept of cross-team collaboration. We see it developing every day. We have staff members who embraced it from the get-go. We had others that were a little slow to come along. We had to convince them that this was something that was going to work, we were going to implement it, we were going to stick with it, and it was going to be successful for us. So we were positive about the implementation, and it really has paid off for us. So these are the things that we have seen work for us in New Hanover County. Now, what you see over here on the right, you may not be able to see it very well in the back, so I apologize, but as Leslie said, the slides will be available for you. We kept it simple. I know you all have heard about the KISS theory, right, as we've gone along many years, but we did keep it simple. The first, it's all paper, it's low tech. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have any learning curves, if you will, as far as the process itself went. When we first introduced this to our supervisors, our data analytics supervisor, if you will, he's the guy that's in the business intelligence and he's all about analytics. And so when we started talking about Scrum, one of the first things he said was, oh, we can use this and we can do that. And they were all great ideas. It was all about software implementation and how to manage the Scrum process. Leslie and I didn't really want that. We wanted to keep it simple so that anybody coming into the project work could really visualize what the process was. We could explain it to them and they could come up to speed very, very quickly. So we decided to keep it low tech. What you see here in this first paper, that is our current monthly sprint. Every month that particular piece of paper is updated with the current project work. The others that you see are the sections of to-do. This is the work that needs to be done to complete these deliverables. We have our doing section. This is the work that actually is currently being worked on, maybe this particular week. And then we have the done section. Everybody likes the done section because that means that their work on that deliverable or that particular task has been completed. We also have another piece of paper that you can't see in this picture, but that is the impediment area as well. And we'll hear a little bit more about that in just a second. Project categories. This is something that has helped us in managing our workload. As I mentioned to you earlier with the ITGC coming into effect, we do have projects that go through that process, and as they are approved and become part of our workload, if you will, for a given period of time, what we have found is that they are reviewing projects and pretty much saying within the next fiscal year, these are the things that we want the IT department to complete. So guess what? The ITGC project work, that is very important for us. That is how we as an IT department are being measured. And so we know that we've been committed to deliver these projects, and that is where our focus has to be. Now, Tier 1 is actually escalated projects. You and I both know that there are ways for projects to sort of circumvent the process, if you will. As good as it may be, there are going to be those things that go around the ITGC process. Our county manager has the authority to trump anything that goes through the ITGC process. He is the county manager. He is receiving direction from the Board of County Commissioners on a daily basis. So there may be something that comes to them, and suddenly it's like, guess what, IT? We now need you to work on this. So we have a category that is Tier 1, and there are escalated projects. Those are the things that do go around the ITGC process, or they might be capital improvement projects, that have not gone through ITGC, but it does require some IT resources and IT work. We currently are working on an example of an escalated project for you, body cameras for the Sheriff's Department. Our staff are in the process of implementing and installing 120 body cameras for the Sheriff's Department in New Hanover County. That is something that really presented itself based on current happenings in our society today, and it went around the ITGC process, but the county manager said, yes, we need to do this, and so that became an escalated project for our staff. We talked about the ITGC projects, Tier 3, Leslie mentioned those to you earlier. Those are our service level agreements that we have in place with our departments. We consider those to be the things that are basically keeping the lights on. We've got to do the things that need to keep the lights on in the departments that we support. It could be anything from a software upgrade. That would be an example of an SLA. Another SLA item that we currently have going on right now in New Hanover County, the elections process has become very technology oriented. We know that that is coming around, in November or whenever it might be, and so our staff are involved in working with elections. That is something that is routine work. We know it's coming, and so that is one of those that we are working with elections to keep their lights on, if you will. And then Tier 4, those are small projects that basically are maybe for a single department. They might require less than 20 hours of work, less than $5,000 to actually implement. So the small projects are the things that we consider to be the small rocks, if you will, kind of fill in the gaps when our staff have time to work on them. So they are the lowest level of priority that our staff have. We know Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, those are the things that we have to do. Tier 4 are the things that we do as time allows. Documentation and tracking. I've always been a big documentation supporter. I don't know about you guys, but in our office, it might be one of the least favorite things for people to do. I don't know if you guys experience that or not, but we do. And we have come a long way in the documentation area, but we still have a long way to go as well. We continue to re-emphasize the importance of documentation. I know that having moved into the role that I'm in now, documentation is more important to me than ever before because I rely on it to provide me with information on where we are, the status of projects, how we can better manage them, what we can add to the workload if we need to, how we can allocate our resources as needed. So documentation is very, very important for us. In New Hanover County, we use SharePoint. I don't know if any of you guys do. We are a Microsoft shop, and we use SharePoint with a project repository for documenting. It is accessible for us through our county intranet site. One of the nice things about this as well is that we took it one step further, and we decided that, you know what, our project work is visible. So really, let's assist in making it as visible as we can. We want other departments to know the amount of work that our staff are doing. We want others to know what they're involved in. There are no secrets. Our work is being measured by the county administration, and so we want to make sure that others in the county understand if they call with that request like Leslie was talking about earlier and say, hey, can you do this for me? We want them to see what our folks, the time is being spent on. So that helps in that regard. But we do have a project repository in SharePoint. On our home page, our landing page in SharePoint, there's actually a button on the front page, and it says IT Project Updates. And so anyone in the county can click on that button, and they can go to a landing page that looks similar to this. And they can click on any of the departments. The departments are all named. When they do that, what they receive is the most recent project updates for the active work that's being done for that particular department. On the landing page itself, not only do you see the departments listed, but you also see the project updates for multi-departmental projects. Right now we have a software, we're looking for a piece of software for several departments to use collaboratively. That is a multi-departmental project. We also have those projects that would be considered enterprise-wide. Our PC replacement rollouts, for example. We have that being planned through part of our sprint process, and so departments can come out and see, where we are in that process as well. So documentation and tracking has become even more important for us. One thing to remember, when you're looking at the project updates, we're reporting on active project work only, okay? So if something has been delayed, perhaps, maybe a vendor is unavailable for a project upgrade or something, and so a project is delayed. There's a status update that says exactly that, and then that is no longer considered active work until it comes back into the cycle again. And as Leslie alluded to earlier, as requests are submitted, maybe you pick up the phone as an analyst and you've got a department who says, I'd like for you to help me with my SharePoint site or what have you, then that request, the analyst or whoever receives that request actually enters it in our project repository as requested. They don't begin working on that request They put it in our project repository, and it then becomes an addition to our backlog. Okay, so they don't start working on that. They add it as a request, and they let the departments know, I'm going to put it in as a request, and we'll see how we can work it in in one of our sprints, and we'll let you know when that occurs. That may have been one of the most difficult things for our staff to embrace, if you will, because many of them, they pick up the phone, they have a request from a department that they provide support to, and they were accustomed to the customer ask and you say yes. So what we have worked with them on and continue to work with them on and reinforce is that when the customer calls and they ask for these sorts of things, let them know what our process is, inform them that it will go into the queue, and as capacity allows, as resources become available, then we will put it into the cycle. Another thing that I think is important, did you have a question?
So they go into the backlog, and you two are the only people who can take things out of the backlog.
We do. We approve
You
things
are
being.
like the gatekeepers for all the work.
Exactly.
And I should mention too that unless it is a real emergency, you don't introduce any new work mid-sprint.
Yes, and you're going to see that on the
So you'll
slide
see
coming
that
up. So
coming up.
that's exactly what we mean. But yes, it does go into the backlog, and it remains there until it becomes approved work.
Real quick question, when you implemented this kind of gatekeeper mythology, did you work with the other department heads to make sure they understood that
We did.
for the initial piece, it would slow them down, but long-term?
Yes.
We did. We have communicated very clearly and routinely with the departments that we support. And TGC, with the inception of that, department heads also were, realized, if you will, that the way that IT work was happening in New Hanover County, that it was shifting. We were making a change. So this really just sort of came in and reinforced that process. But yes, we communicate with the department heads daily.
I'll say too, one of the other things we did, I mentioned retrospectives, which we're not going to really talk about today, but we involved a couple of the department heads early on in those retrospectives. So we let them know we're going to work on your work this month. And then at the end of the month, we invited them to this retrospective meeting, and they got to voice, how it worked for them. And we got some good ideas from them about communication. That's where some of these project update ideas came from. A couple of them wanted to come to our stand-ups, which we've had department heads come and witness those or be part of them from time to time. So that helped get them involved in our new process. And as you say, in the short term, they may not get it done right now, but instead of getting started right now and maybe never finishing, they were getting it started 2 weeks from now in the next sprint and getting a product at the end of the sprint, if that makes sense. So they ended up in a better place. And I think most of them are really on board with it.
I do. I think that we pretty much have the support of the department heads. We meet with our departments on a quarterly basis, if you will, and we talk with them about the project updates, the status of where we are. If we run into any impasses, we talk with them about any business initiatives that they are thinking of. And so we really try to involve them in the process as much as we can to let them know that we are here to support you. We just want to make sure that when we start something for you, we have the necessary resources to allocate to that work, and that we can plan it and give you a deliverable within a certain time period. What we were finding,
I had a really quick question. Who are the members of your ITGC?
the members of the ITGC, if I can remember them, Leslie can
So
help me there.
the ITGC, we have one department head representative from each of the kind of disciplines of county government. So we have a department head that represents the public safety community. We have a department head that represents our cultural and recreational agencies, which is like the library, parks and gardens, those folks. We have an administrative department head, which is our HR director right now. We have a group with what I'm going to call land development, the land development group that is there. And we have, I'm trying to think of one more department. Health and Human Services is the 5th department head. I chair or co-chair the committee with our budget and strategy chief. And we have the deputy county manager on the committee. So it's 5 department heads, budget and strategy, IT, and deputy county manager are on that committee.
And the ITGC is actually something that could be a whole nother session on the way that works and the process that we go through. But those committee members actually, with the exception of the co-chairs and the assistant county manager, I believe, are on a rotating basis for a 2-year period, if I believe is correct. So, but ITGC seems to be working for us. It is taking some time, to get those departments acclimated to that process. Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, I'm just curious. So once it starts, I guess once the sprint is in place, do these people exclusively work on just this project? They get full ability of doing incidents, or what's the?
Actually, that's a great question. So what we learned when we actually asked our staff several months back to kind of keep track of their time, and what they were spending their time on. And it actually came out that the majority of their time was spent on SLA items, keeping the lights on. So our managers have had to learn to work with our staff in allocating resources appropriately, if you will, so that they recognize that maybe 60% of their time is going, for our analysts, for example, will be spent on keeping the lights on, application support, those kinds of things. They will have some incidentals that come up, some unknowns that come up, so they've got to keep a certain amount of time available for that. And then maybe they have, 30% of their time that they can actually allocate to projects. So we keep that in mind as we're going through the planning process and allocating those resources, working with our teams. We've got, as Leslie mentioned to you earlier, we've got an operations team. Those are our network people. There's not a whole lot, well, there are some things in Hanover County that we do that don't involve them. There's not a whole lot that doesn't involve the network folks in some capacity. So we've got to take this team of 5 people and allocate their time accordingly to all these projects that are going on in our department. We also have our user support team. They're typically our break-fix folks, but they too are part of our project teams. They have to be. They're resources for us. So we really have to be able to plan and to manage the time, for our staff, the resources. I'm going to take this question right over here, and then I'll come back to you.
Just for some context, how many users are you guys supporting? Within your group, how many help desk folks do you have versus kind of like analysts?
That's a great question too. So our staff, I guess there aren't any questions that aren't great, right? But anyway, our staff, we have about 29 total. And within that, to break it down for you roughly, we have our user support team that we have 5 with a team lead. We have our operations staff, 4 with a supervisor. We have 2 team of business analysts, if you will. One is a team of 4 analysts and a supervisor. The second is a team of 4 analysts and our web designer, if you will, with a supervisor. And then we have our business intelligence and GIS folks. And that is a team of 4 with a supervisor. And then there are the rest of us, I guess.
Administration.
I was like, what do you want to call us? But there are 4 of us on that team as well. So that's the breakdown in our office. One of the great things about this whole process, in my opinion, is that it has opened up communication within our department, and that our staff now recognize that they are resources for one another. Our operations folks, if you will, they might be the network administrator, they might be the phone person, whatever their role might be, but they are an internal resource for our staff as well. So it really has helped us with that. How many users? About
1,700 is what the budgeted FTEs are, but with volunteers and all those others, it's probably closer to 2,000 people that we support. I will say too, and this could be another whole session, we outsourced our level 1 service desk. So our incoming calls for things like password resets and remote support go to a third party.
So our tier 1 remote support that is outsourced, and we actually began that process in March of this year. So we've had a lot of happenings, a lot lot of changes going on within our IT department within the last year. But it all seems to be working very well. It seems to be coming together very nicely for us, and we are seeing some positive results. I'm sorry.
We're beginning this process as well, and we're going through that change. And one of the things that our CIO, he got the buy-in from the departments to start planning 18 to 24 months out. Do you all do that same thing, and how effective has it been?
That's great. Where are you from?
Mecklenburg County.
Okay. I just wanted to know who I'm talking to. No, we basically are looking at a fiscal year time period, if you will, because that is, the basis for that simply is that's what the ITGC folks have put in place for us. So we're working within that same time period. Now, we do have some things on the capital improvement projects, if you will, that are longer term than that. And so we know if IT resources are going to be required for that. But for the most part, with our sprint planning and managing our workload, we're looking at a fiscal year.
But to your point, we had ITGC meeting yesterday in New Hanover County, and we are talking about the projects that will not start until next fiscal year.
Yeah.
So we are working on prioritizing projects for our work that will start in July of 16. So we are further out, like you're talking about. These are the big projects. The SLA stuff comes in throughout the year, and the small projects come in throughout the year for the most part. But the big projects, we're like you guys, 18 months or so out,
Okay.
really on a lot of that.
Okay, and so the actual duration of our sprint, 4 weeks, is what we deal with. Why? Because we can? No. Why? Because it's easy. Because it's simple. I mean, we're so used to doing things a month at a time, if you will. So it was something that was more familiar for staff and easier for us to manage. Don't make it complicated for yourselves. Keep it simple. It works. Not all projects are completed in 4 weeks. I'm sure that that's not shocking to you. But what is completed in 4 weeks are deliverables for certain parts of a project. So you're looking at a project, and maybe it is going to take you, 12 months to complete it in its entirety. But within those 12 months, we'll have 12 sprints, and you'll have certain deliverables for each of those sprints. Okay? So in the end, what's important is your deliverable at the end of each sprint. It may not be that the project in its entirety closes, but the deliverables that you've identified for completing within that time period will be what will close for you. And I think we mentioned earlier that new work does not begin mid-sprint. We stick to that. That is those things that kind of creep in on you that cause you not to be able to finish the work that you should be focused on. So if a request comes in, then we may need to start it at the next sprint, but we don't enter it mid-sprint. So we stay focused on what we begin with so that we can see and measure how we end up at the end of the sprint. Planning and preparation. Yes, it does require planning and preparation. We have a monthly sprint planning session. Leslie mentioned that we just had one on Tuesday. We do this every month, the third Tuesday of each month. Our managers get together, and they basically are determining what next month's work will look like. So we're always planning. We're always planning for the next thing. The supervisors, during this meeting, they're doing a few things. They're confirming what projects will actually complete from the current sprint. So they're identifying that work that's going to complete the project itself at the end of this sprint. They're also confirming what projects are going to continue into the next sprint. Now, we just talked about that you may not close a project in a sprint, but you'll be closing parts of that, those deliverables that you've identified. So those projects that are continuing to the next sprint, that's part of our planning meeting. The third thing that they're looking at is they're going to discuss what projects will begin new in this upcoming sprint. So we've got the things that are completing, the things that are going to carry over into the next month, and then the things that we have capacity to bring on as new projects. Another thing, and this has been something that our supervisors have been working on, is that they have to agree that they have available resources for the sprint, the project work that's going to be done. So the supervisors, the communication has opened up amongst themselves, and they recognize that their team members are resources for each other. And so they also have to recognize that when they have allocated their staff as a resource, they have to remember that when they're going to them and asking them to do things. You know, that they have already allocated their time for certain project work, if you will. So it has opened up communication amongst our managers, if you will. And the last note that I have on this slide is that prior to our monthly sprint planning meeting, our supervisors have met with their teams, and they're talking to them about where they are in their current sprint work, and they're asking for their input on the next month's work. So it is truly a team effort. It is a collaborative effort every day, if you will. And it's important to involve your staff in that process because you want buy-in. You want buy-in from your staff. This is the work that they're doing. You want them to want to do it. So you need their input. The Scrum Board, I mentioned that to you a little bit earlier, but the takeaway here is very low tech. You could be able to go back to your shop today and you could start this. You know, just get yourself some big wall-size Post-its if you want, and you can use it in that respect. But it's simple, but it's visual. There's no learning curve, really. I mean, you learn the Scrum process, but as far as the actual Scrum Board itself, it's pretty easy to embrace. So our current monthly sprint items, the work is categorized, as I mentioned earlier, into the 4 tiers, the escalated projects, the ITGC projects, the SLA projects, and the small projects. And guess what? Purple is escalated. Pink is ITGC. Blue is SLA, and green are small projects. And that is about as simple as you can get. And so what we do from that perspective, if you will, is we have the current monthly sprint items. You know, the October sprint list is on the board for them. That list is broken down into those categories. The escalated projects are at the top, followed by the ITGC projects, followed by the SLA projects, and then last are the small projects. When our teams are reporting, we are reporting in that order. We talk about the escalated, then we talk about ITGC, we talk about SLA, and we talk about small projects. Part of that reasoning, part of that rationale is to instill the importance in the priority work that we've identified. Okay? We have mentioned to you before, we have different sections on our Scrum Board. There is the to-do section. And that really is your work breakdown section, if you will, where you've taken from your sprint list, you've got your deliverables identified for that month. That deliverable, a single deliverable, will have certain tasks associated with it. Your tasks are going to be the items that are going to show up on your Post-it notes on the to-do section. So every task for a particular deliverable will have a Post-it note represented on the Scrum Board. From the to-do section, we go to doing. Doing is exactly that. It's current. It's what are you doing this week? So our folks are actually moving those Post-it notes from the to-do section to the doing section. So they're actually physically going up, and they're taking that Post-it note from to-do, and they're walking over, and they're placing it under the doing section. All right? And then from doing, once it's done, once it's completed, they move it again into that completed section. The last thing that we have on our Scrum Board are the impediments section. Leslie mentioned this a little earlier. If we get into a situation where a project has come to a standstill because of a certain thing, it could be a person. And we've had people get up and say, I am waiting on the vendor to get back with me. I'm trying to schedule something with the vendor to do this. Or I have someone in the department and I am waiting on them to test, right? We're doing something with an implementation of some sort, and so they're waiting on staff for testing. So they write down on whatever color code they need to, what that impediment is, and they place it on the impediment board. It then becomes the responsibility of our supervisors, our scrum masters, to work with those staff to resolve those impediments. It may be that that supervisor, gets on the phone and they call the vendor, and I'm telling you, we've seen it work. We've seen our analysts, time and time again, call a vendor and try to get something done, and for whatever reason it doesn't happen. Supervisor gets on the phone with them and identify themselves as IT supervisor in Hanover County IT, and things change. That's just the way that it works sometimes, unfortunately. But nonetheless, so we have the different areas here on our Scrum Board, and it is a very physical process, if you will, but it's a visual. So you can actually see a deliverable identified. You can see the color-coded tasks that have been broken down for that deliverable, and you can actually watch those papers, those Post-it notes, move across the board, if you will, during that given sprint. So at any point in time, Leslie and I can walk out of our office. Scrum Board is actually in the back of the IT office, back near where we work. We can walk out at any given point in time, and we can visually see the progress that a project is making. We can also, for reinforcement, go to our project repository, the documentation, and get more specifics and updates on where those particular projects are. So it all kind of ties in
I
together.
will say that has been really a neat thing to watch. Here towards the end of a month, the end of our Scrum Cycle, if you walk in our door, and it's our back door where staff enter, and you see this board, most of the stickies are moved over towards the done side. And there's something really psychological about that you're seeing visually your work. And Cindy mentioned that we IT people, we want something on SharePoint, we want something cool, we can make a dashboard. But we did not want to get wrapped around how to use or how to program technology. This is visual. When you walk in the door, you don't have to pull up a browser to look at it. And it takes zero technical skill to move a sticky note.
Absolutely.
So it's worked well.
So I have a question about how you choose what's in a sprint. You have to use some type of estimating tool to determine how long tasks are going to take and to determine how much work can fit in a month. So what did you do to determine that?
So that's experience, a lot of that. If you look into Scrum, they have all these scoring processes that you can use, and it's all about learning your capacity and estimating skills. That's a thing that you learn over time. So actually, and I can go off on a tangent with the scoring thing, but in Sprint, or in Scrum proper, your team will actually estimate these deliverables using scores, so like 1 to 10. The team, everybody holds up a card, and they estimate this is effort 8, this is effort 5, and then over time you compare, was their estimate accurate?
So the other thing too that we did when we went into this process is we did it slowly. We started in January, if you will, and we had each of our teams basically take 1 or 2 projects and sprint them so that they could become acclimated to the process. They could learn what we were asking of them to do, and we really have worked our way up. So in January, we just started with a few projects, but with every team being involved in the process. And we started the fiscal year in July with the work that we've identified in the 4 tiers that we have, with all of that active work being sprinted. Now, the interesting thing about that is that we allowed 30 minutes for our stand-up meetings, 30 minutes for reporting. All of our staff gathers in the back of our office every Monday morning, unless there's a holiday, then we reschedule and we meet on Wednesday. But we meet once a week because those meetings are important. We gather in the back of the office. The teams actually report on the work that's being done. That might actually be my next slide. Let's see. It is. How funny is that? Okay. So basically the 30-minute stand-ups, what we have found is that even when it was just a small amount of work being done, and now we're looking at a pretty long list of items being done, we're able to keep folks on track. And we are out of that meeting within that 30-minute time period. Now, what I will say to you is that if there are items that the teams need to discuss, those are conversations that take place outside of our stand-up meetings. So your stand-up meeting has one purpose, if you will, and it is that the teams report on their active project work. The projects are called out, you go through the escalated list, and then the ITGC list, the SLA list, and the small project list. We call those projects out. The team lead comes up, the team members come with them, and each of them report on the task that they have been working on. Those team members are part of that communication. We want to open up communication within our department, and we want to provide everybody with an opportunity to say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm working on, this is what I've done on this project. That's important. And again, those team members are moving the corresponding Post-it notes along the Scrum Board, if you will. So they're walking up to the center of that Scrum Board, they're turning around, they're talking, and if they need to move that Post-it note, they pick it up and they physically move it to the next location that it needs to go. So it demonstrates that they are an active part of the team, if you will. They're answering 3 questions, and 3 questions only. Each person that reports, 3 things that they want to tell us. And they are what they completed last week. What I got done last week was this. What are they going to be doing this week? This is what I'm going to be working on this week. And the 3rd thing that they answer, are there any impediments? If there are impediments, again, they've identified them on a Post-it note, they place them on the impediment board, and then the supervisor works to get that resolved so that that project can continue to move forward. So 3 questions they're answering. What they completed last week, what they're going to be doing this week, and are there any impediments? It's for every project, for every task, and we keep it moving, we keep it going. If there are things, other discussions that need to happen within the team, they do that outside of the stand-up meeting. If you don't follow that process, you could find yourself getting bogged down in a lot of details that the entire group doesn't need to be a part of.
So we have often people on our staff work for 2 projects that are not run in our department. So how do they fit into the Scrum Cycle? Because those departments aren't applying Scrum necessarily.
That's a great question. Again, but our project leads are reporting on behalf of what has happened in that process. We have not brought, to this point, we have not brought other outside project members in, if you will. For example, we currently have a project going on in the sheriff's office, and it involves not just our department folks, but others like human resources and budget strategy, if you will. And so our project lead from IT is reporting on their behalf when she is giving the project update. So again, just remember that Scrum, although it started for software development, it was put together for that. It's not just for software. You can take it and you can make it fit and need it to work for you. It has allowed us to see results. It has proven itself to be a better way to plan and manage our project work. And it's improved our visibility, not just within our department, but within the county as well. So it's really nice to be able to go into a department and we're talking with department heads and we really are delivering on our promises. That's important. You know, when you build that relationship with those departments and you have increased your credibility within that department by delivering what you say you will deliver, it's a beautiful thing. So it's improved visibility, it's improved communication. Again, not just within our department, but from our department to another, or to the others that we support, and cross-team collaboration. That has truly been one of the biggest benefits for us, is opening up the communication and collaboration within our department. What we found before is that oftentimes folks within the IT office had no idea what somebody across the room was doing. You know, they didn't know what the operations team were doing. They just knew that they were in their cubes a lot, so surely they couldn't be working on anything, right? But, so this has really opened up that collaboration, if you will, amongst our staff. And I think that it also has increased the respect of our staff members for one another, the appreciation for the work that they actually do and the contributions that they bring to the table. We've had questions along the way, but if you have others, we'll be happy to entertain them.
When you receive requests on bid sprint, is there anyone reviewing them, or are they just put aside right away?
They go into the backlog, which is they're entered into our project repository. Our staff members are communicating with their supervisors so that they know that new items have been added to the sprint. If it needs to be brought to our attention that, hey, this is an emergency or what have you, then it comes to Leslie and I as well. But otherwise, it goes into that backlog, that project repository. The supervisors are aware that it's there, and when we get to our mid-month planning session, it's brought forward at that time.
So many times what happens is, they are related to the work we are doing. So say we are building a table, and the request comes in saying you want an extra week, and if you put it in the backlog, the table is filled, then later you have to demolish it to rebuild it.
That's not new work though. What we're talking about that goes on the backlog is new work. So that's a changing requirement that the project team would bring in and have to deal with in their sprint.
Some may look at it as scope creep, you know. Others may look at it as my deliverable has now changed, so you need to go back and you'll have a conversation with the stakeholders. So you might have to go back to the drawing table with them, if you will. Just depends on what it is. But if it is truly new work, it goes into that backlog repository. Other questions? Yes.
Hopefully you all have like really good star performers that finish their work early and move on. Do they go in and just help their other team members with tasks? Do they roll to another team? If they finish, you know, if there's supervisors, if they finish everything that they can work on, do you go full off with next month's? I mean, how do you kind of keep that consistency flowing?
Oh, wow, okay. Leslie, next time we don't do an 8:30 session. I'm having to think. So to answer your question, it probably varies for different workers. What you're going to find in our sprint is that we have folks working on multiple things, not just one project, but they've got multiple work going on. They might have, they might serve as a project lead in the escalated project here for a project, but then they've got a couple of SLA items that they're also working on. They may even have a small project they're working on as well. So for the most part, what we're finding is that they have enough work built into that current sprint that they stay busy the whole time. So it might be that their focus, you know, they may finish with their work on the escalated project, and then they can kind of work on that small project that they put on the back burner, because that's the small rocks, if you will, and they've got time allowed to go in and do something for that department. So we have seen, though, with the process put in place, where staff members are really beginning or starting to offer suggestions and ideas, and I think that is a great thing. But for the most part, what we're seeing is that there is work there to keep them busy. They also have, keep in mind, their break fix tickets that might be coming in, so they've got work there. You know, our operations team, they always have something going on that they can certainly stay busy with. So, a great question. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
You had those 4 tiers for priorities. Does that mean that when you start your sprint, you're taking all of them and they're all part of the sprint, or do you at times have to only take like tier 1 and tier 2 as part of the sprint?
So in our sprint, as it's worked out for us at this point, we have representation in each of those different tiers. Basically, we have, you know, staff members. You know, everybody may not be on a project team for the escalated projects, if you will. Their work might come into the SLA, for example. So it just depends on what the workload is at the time. But from where we've been to now, every month has involved something from each of the 4 tiers.
When we started though, we did start with just the big ones.
That's right.
The escalated and the SLA projects, just to get used to the process. But now, anything that's not break fix or problem resolution,
started with the escalated or the ITGC projects is again that we wanted to instill with our staff the importance of the priority work. You know, that our focus really did have to be on, this is what IT is being measured on, and this is what we have to deliver. So we were going through a paradigm shift, if you will, where our staff were accustomed to picking up the phone and the customers called and asked for something, and so they were like, well, I've got to deliver great customer service, so I have to say yes. And that's where they found that they weren't able to really close a lot of things, or that work was just kind of hanging out there for an extended period of time.
So if you've already started your sprint, you said you won't start anymore, bring anyone in, and it's the town commissioner who says, by the way, I need this, you're like, well, in 3 weeks, we'll have it back on board.
So let's talk about that.
You can never say never, because we mentioned
Let's talk
early
about
on
that.
that some people get drunk with the process. But I will say that our county manager really respects this process. And I was telling Cindy yesterday, you know, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. We have a capital improvements project meeting tomorrow afternoon. It's a quarterly meeting. And the person that is running that meeting out of our finance office sent an email out to all of the folks and said the project manager on each project must be prepared for this meeting to answer 3 questions. Guess what they were? What you did since the last meeting, what you're going to be doing between now and the next meeting, and what are any impediments to getting this project moving.
They did use a few different words,
Yeah.
but they all meant the same. I think their impediment word was barrier, but anyway, so that was really kind of like, okay, this is working, you know. We have had departments come in and take a peek at our Scrum process, our sprint meetings, and I think that's helped them as well. We've had other agencies come and take a peek at what we have going on. We continue to refine the process, but it's working for us. Other questions? Well, thank you so much for your time and attention this morning. We've got to take